Population exploded because young people were able to achieve independence and didn't have to wait to inherit a farm to get married and have children. All the people needed was a small piece of land for a garden and a cottage for the loom and spinning wheel in order to have an adequate living. Cottage workers married at a young age for different reasons. Before 1750, marriages were often conducted to satisfy the needs of the couple's families. However, after 1750, marriage was beginning to occur earlier and was more free. People were getting married because they were in love, not just because their parents wanted them to. As the rising population was out searching for work in towns, villages, and cities, this also gave opportunities for new sexual and marital relationships, which in turn resulted in more illegitimate births.
Ivan, I'm pregnant. Get out of my house, you dirty whore!
In other words, people were off looking for work, and while they were on the prowl for a job, they also happened to engage in sexual activities. Women ended up looking to marriage and family life to escape their horrible jobs as textile workers and servants. However, the problem was, as women have reported, men would promise women marriage if they agreed to have sexual activity with them. Now, at the time, most men were sincere. However, they were also insecure and scared to take on the heavy burden of a family, so this resulted in a lot of unwed mothers. Times were changing, and illegitimacy was simply rising and rising.
Childcare and nursing. Women in the lower and middle classes generally nursed their own offspring, whereas the upper classes looked upon this as barbaric or undignified. In parts of Russia, nobody breastfed their young, but gave their children a sweetened cloth to suck on, which was neither sanitary or nourishing. In these places, as few as half the babies did not make it through the first year. Wet nursing was a common occupation during the 18th century. These were women hired by wealthy families to breastfeed infants. These women were very poor and generally mistreated by the hiring families. Employment offices basically owned them and transported them to their jobs as soon as the baby was old enough to be fed solid nutrients. The wet nurse was blamed if anything happened to the baby, including but not limited to bad traits developed over time. There were also many greedy nurses that killed the children to collect the fees.
I want my money. Foundlings and infanticide. During ancient times, women often had too many babies than they are able to take care of. It was common for these mothers to kill their children or just let them die in cold blood, especially girls, therefore committing infanticide. The medieval church believed that all life was sacred and that infanticide should be illegal. If one committed the crime, they would be punished by death. However, babies were still being killed. One example is overlaying, where parents would claim that they had accidentally rolled over onto their baby during sleep and the child suffocated. In Austria, by 1784, it was illegal for infants under the age of 5 years old to sleep in the bed with their parents. The reason parents would kill their children is because even one more mouth to feed could result in financial ruin. Young women with unwanted children did not have many options in dealing with them. Oh my God, I can't deal with this! Abortion was not an option because it was unsafe, very dangerous, illegal, and uncommon. Oftentimes these women would leave their babies on the church doorstep to be baptized, ensuring the baby's place in heaven. If not baptized, it was very possible that infants would end up in limbo. Because of the amount of babies that were left on the doorstep of the church, St. Vince de Paul established a home where these babies could be cared for.
I'm sorry I have to do this to you.
name of God, it's another one.
Oh, dear Jesus.
Oh,
Another
God.
baby.
This one's a big one, too.
But that's got Lord, of course. Salvation.
These homes started to appear in several areas starting in the 18th century. These dwellings, called foundling homes, where people who could not take care of their babies left their children. The downsides of these homes were, by the 1700s, almost 1/3 of all Parisian babies were abandoned, and 1/3 of those babies abandoned were offspring of married couples. Another problem was, although hundreds of babies were being brought to homes, a great many did not survive. Only 50% of babies in the best foundling home survived, and in the worst, only 10% survived.
During the 18th century, children were seen as a minor concern to adults. All classes considered them minor concerns.
Love me, Mama.
Shut up! Get back to work!
Kids these days.
These kids, they are such a
Nuisance.
For example, the rich used wet nurses to take care of their children and get them out of the way so they didn't have to spend their time and effort on raising their children. And also it was said that English gentlemen had more interest in the diseases of their horses than in the care of their own children. Many believe that the incentive for them to think this was that the children were likely to die, yet they were likely to die because they were neglected. So doctors usually urged the adults of their children not to get too emotionally involved because normally they would die before the age of 9. Medical establishments also didn't care for the children. The best hope that they had for medical treatment was by women healers and midwives. Many methods were used to encourage the care of children, such as foundling homes for discouraging infanticide and urging the wealthy women to nurse their own children. And also they would ridicule swaddling. More expressed delight in the love and intimacy of their child, and they found pleasure in actually raising their offspring. So this expresses the general growth of humanitarianism and a cautious optimism about the human potential, which characterizes the 18th century Enlightenment.
Schools are mainly for boys and girls ages 7 through 12. They learned elementary literature and religion. The Protestants and Catholics struggled to promote the form of religion in school. The border areas became the most literate because they were open to outside influence and to the competition between these two religions. Most commoners didn't even get an education. Prussia led the development of universal education. In 1717, they made it mandatory for all children to go to school. They agreed with the Protestants' idea that everyone had the right to be educated. From 1600s to the 1800s, people became more literate. The Church of England also established charity schools to instruct the poor, and the growth of literature increased the popularity of reading in all countries. The Bible was the favorite book,
This is my favorite book!
but pamphlets called chapbooks were also popular. They featured the Bible stories, prayers, devotions, and they talked about important saints and Christian figures. Humorous stories, fairy tales, romances, historical fiction, and adventures were also popular for people to read. Another common type of book were practical literature. These books taught people how to do everyday life things and gave instructions on common household chores and such. Though literacy was increased in both classes, the reading between the commoners and the elite were very different.